I create worlds. We all do. A world is just a good story. I had many such stories when I was young. I'd take plot lines from good movies and video games and remix them into long arcs with Legos. Characters traveling to different parts of my room, playing out dramas with time loops and world-changing events. In many senses, these stories were real to me, and the themes I wrestled with were a conversation I was having with writers and game developers from all over the world. In junior high school, some crazy person, my mother, lent me her video camera. My boy self could not get enough of how I'd invented teleportation by recording the camera zooming in to a solid color and then cutting to zooming out from the same color in a different room. It was fucking magic. I'd created a portal. Recently, in a therapy session, the person guiding it noted that I seemed to like manifesting locations to represent the feelings in my body, along with the person, and the locations were usually connected, as if there were portals between them in this impossible mind space. One particularly vivid location I encountered was this endless beach, shrouded in darkness, but not obscured by it. It was a very calming place, and I wanted to share it with others. I started off by thinking about environmental design. I've never really handcrafted a level before, and while I aspire to be proficient in most aspects of game development, in the end I decided to make it procedurally, with code. First, using the Geometry Nodes feature in Blender, the 3D editing program, which lets you construct and modify 3D meshes almost like a drag-and-drop spreadsheet formula. That worked okay. Next, I wanted to spend a little time on the appearance. My plan was to see if I could easily detect the sharp edges pointing up and store that information in the 3D model so I could use it to alter the appearance. There are a few ways of doing it, and I couldn't get any of them to look good, so I delayed working on that until later. I wanted to add some water and see if I could get it to show foam. This was non-trivial. The common technique is, on each frame in the game, wait until the very end to render the water in the 3D environment, so you can compare how close each part of the water is with the land behind it from the perspective of the player. Places where the land is close to the water is generally the shoreline and should have foam. Places where it's far are probably deeper water. Another similar method is, ahead of time, figure out how far each part of the water is from the land beneath it. Then, store that information somewhere and use it when rendering the water. That's what I went for. I thought it might be more accurate. What that entailed was, at the beginning of the game, for each part of the water, raycasting a line down from above to see where it collides with the land, and then storing that data. It was even more complicated to get it right than it sounds. Next, I added a sun and some basic color for the sand. It seemed like it'd be easier to iterate on the procedurally generated terrain if I generated it directly in the game engine, so I migrated that over. It was the first time I generated 3D meshes in the game engine. Exciting! Another first for this game dev experience was writing code for the graphics in the game engine Unity. I'd done it before using the drag-and-drop interface that Unity has, and also written graphics code for other game engines, but had always been intimidated by the setup in Unity for some reason. I plunged headfirst working on the skybox, or the thing you see in games when there's nothing else in the way. Iterating on graphics code is one of my favorite parts of game development. I hope it shows. When I find some parameter that has a weird impact on the visuals, I love to just crank it up and see what happens. Who needs a sun and a sky and sand and water if there's no one to see it? So I made it so that the player can walk around. I extended the beach. And then I added the ability to zoom in and out because why not? This is the point where I spent days and days writing code for the multiplayer. I targeted the web browser as the platform for this game because I didn't think most people would spend more than a couple minutes playing, so asking them to download a game to their computer sounded like too much. Another first, I used the WebSockets protocol to pass messages from the player's web browser to my computer server in order to coordinate the multiplayer aspects between players. The bulk of the project was done once I got it recording the player's position over time and sending it to other live players, as well as saving those positions to play back later for future players, in case there weren't many people around. The last thing to do was add the sound of waves and some music. And when the player entered the water, I added a low-pass filter on the sound and some visual effects. That's it. This project, Dark Beach, is a story. Stories are all we've ever had. Thank you.